I met Lauren 10 years ago, on one of those early spring days that tricks you into thinking winter's over. I was standing in line at a food truck downtown, some overpriced taco stand that everyone swore was life-changing, and she was in front of me, complaining about how the menu didn't list any vegetarian options. I made some dumb joke about meat being its own food group, and she turned, gave me this look, half amused, half unimpressed, and just said, "Maybe try a salad sometime." I laughed, she cracked a smile, and we ended up eating at the same table. That's how it started. Casual, unforced, real. She had this energy to her, bright, quick, always a few steps ahead in conversation. I remember thinking, she's the kind of person who knows who she is, and I like that. I'd just gotten out of a long-term thing that had fizzled, and I wasn't really looking for anything serious, but Lauren made it easy to lean in. One coffee turned into dinner, dinner turned into weekends together, and within a year, we were living in a small apartment above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon at 6 a.m. We got married 2 years after that, in a small ceremony by a lake near where she grew up. No big fuss, just a tight group of family and close friends, some handwritten vows, and a lot of happy tears. I still remember the way she looked at me during our first dance, like the world had narrowed down to just us. It sounds cheesy, but it felt like magic. Now, we're in our mid-30s, living in a cozy house in the suburbs about 20 minutes outside the city. She works in digital marketing, loves it, lives for her campaign launches, and I work in cybersecurity. It's not the most glamorous job, but it's solid, and I like the problem-solving aspect of it. We don't have kids yet, though we've talked about it. It's been more of a someday thing for us. Right now, we're enjoying life the way it is. Our routine's pretty simple, but full in its own way. We wake up early, go for runs on the weekends, binge-watch documentaries we never finish, and have this unspoken tradition of making pancakes on Sundays, even when we're too tired. She's the messy one. I'm the neat freak. She leaves half-finished mugs of tea everywhere, and I secretly collect them and place them in the sink like it's a scavenger hunt. We've got a dog named Otis, a rescue mutt who's all ears and no discipline, but we love him like a child. Most nights, dinner is just the two of us at the kitchen island, talking about our days. Nothing big, nothing dramatic, just two people sharing space, sharing life. We laugh a lot. I'd always say our marriage wasn't flashy, but it was steady, predictable in the best way. Like wearing your favorite hoodie. Familiar, comfortable. That's who we were. Or maybe, still are, depending on how you look at it. Lauren and I have been married 8 years now. Feels strange to say that out loud. 8 years. Time moves differently in marriage. Some days it feels like we just said our vows. Others it's like we've been doing life together forever. But in a good way. Like we've created our own little rhythm that's unique to us. Our house isn't huge, but it's ours. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a sunroom we turned into an office, and a backyard that we've been slowly fixing up. Lauren's got this vision of making it into an outdoor lounge, string lights, fire pit, maybe even one of those pizza ovens. I keep teasing her that she's trying to turn it into a Pinterest board, but I've got to admit, she's got an eye for it. Every season, she changes the throw pillows, and somehow it makes the whole place feel brand new. We both work full-time, but our schedules give us a decent balance. I work remotely a few days a week, and she's hybrid, office Mondays and Thursdays, home the rest. We've got this dance around each other during work hours. I'll be in the dining room with my headset on. She'll be across the house in the office with hers. At lunch, we usually meet in the kitchen like co-workers bumping into each other, making jokes about needing HR. Weekends are our reset. Saturday mornings are for the farmer's market, something we started doing during lockdown and just stuck with. We get fresh bread, overpriced strawberries, and coffee from a local vendor who now knows our order by heart. Lauren always insists we buy fresh flowers, says the house feels more alive with them. I never cared much about that stuff before her, but I've grown to love the way they brighten the room. We don't have wild social lives, but we've got a solid circle of friends, couples we meet for dinner, occasional game nights, and the annual Friendsgiving we've hosted the last 3 years. Lauren's amazing at that sort of thing. She'll plan the playlist, the seating, even the lighting, and I'm just there to make the drinks and pretend I did half the work. One of the things I love most is how easily we laugh. Like, real belly laughs over the dumbest things. Bad puns. Random TikToks. The other night, we spent 15 minutes trying to remember the name of a childhood snack, and ended up Googling our way through an entire nostalgia trip. It's those moments I hold on to the most. They feel simple on the surface, but they're everything. We're not perfect. We bicker over laundry, whether or not to get a second dog. If pineapple belongs on pizza, she's pro, I'm firmly against. But it's always lighthearted. We've built something stable, something that feels safe. And in a world that seems to be constantly spinning off its axis, that's meant everything to me. Sometimes, I catch her across the room when she's not looking, hair tucked behind one ear, face lit up from her laptop screen, and I still feel it. That little spark. That quiet, yeah, this is my person kind of moment. I never say anything when it happens. I just kind of let myself feel it. I guess that's what this part is really about. Not the grand gestures, but the quiet spaces we fill with each other. The shared grocery lists, the inside jokes, the early morning coffee runs. The normal stuff that ends up meaning the most. Lauren's always been the planner between the two of us. She's got color-coded calendars, long-term spreadsheets for everything from our finances to where she wants to travel next, and this quiet confidence that things will work out if you just give them structure. Me, I'm more of a take-it-as-it-comes kind of guy. But together, somehow, it's worked. Her structure balances my calm, and my calm softens her intensity. For the past couple years, we've been slowly shifting from let's enjoy life to let's build a future. Not in a rushed or desperate way, just more intentional. We paid off most of our debt last year, credit cards, lingering student loans, even knocked out a chunk of the mortgage. There was a weekend in January where we stayed in, made a huge pot of chili, and just sat at the dining table going over our 5-year plan. It was oddly romantic in its own way. We'd talked, more seriously than ever, about having a child. Not tomorrow, not even this year, but the topic had moved from someday to, when we're ready, maybe soon. We both wanted to make sure we had enough saved up for maternity leave, for childcare, for just breathing room. I'd catch her sometimes looking at baby clothes when we passed by that section in Target, just a little too long. She never said anything, just a small smile and a finger tracing the edge of a onesie. I noticed. I didn't say anything either. The other big plan was travel. Lauren's dream was Italy, Amalfi Coast, wine tours, cobblestone streets, and warm evenings. Mine was Japan. We had this fantasy of doing a month abroad once we both hit a certain milestone in our careers. A sort of reward for everything we'd been grinding toward. We even had a shared Pinterest board. Yes, a literal travel goals board. We'd add to it during lazy Sunday mornings, lying in bed, scrolling side by side. At home, we were in nesting mode. Little things, like finally fixing up the spare bedroom, turning it from a cluttered storage cave into something that looked a lot like a nursery, though we never called it that out loud. She painted the walls a soft, neutral color. I assembled a bookshelf. We put a daybed in there for guests, but we both knew it wasn't really for that. Professionally, we were in a good place. I'd just gotten promoted to lead a new client team at work, which came with a decent raise and more flexibility. Lauren's projects had been getting a lot of recognition. One of her campaigns even got a small industry award. I remember taking her out that night, just the two of us, nothing fancy. She wore this maroon dress that still makes my chest ache when I think about it. We clinked glasses over dinner, and she said, "We're getting there, huh?" And we were. Our life wasn't flashy, but it was full. Weeknight dinners, weekend projects, late-night conversations about names we might like one day, cities we'd love to see, what kind of dog we'd get if Otis ever stopped being jealous enough to allow it. I thought we were building something real. I thought we were moving in the same direction. At least, that's what I believed. It was a Thursday night, one of those slow, in-between evenings where neither of us had anything to do, but neither of us was feeling particularly close. I was on the couch, half watching some crime documentary with Otis curled up beside me, and Lauren was at the kitchen island scrolling on her phone. I remember hearing the ice clink in her glass. White wine, second pour, and then she said it, casually, like she was mentioning a new show we should check out. "Can I ask you something? Kind of weird?" I looked over. "Yeah, of course." She hesitated for just a second, and then said, "What do you think about open relationships?" I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. But she didn't smile back. She just stared at me, eyes flat but focused, like she'd been rehearsing the line and was finally getting it out. I sat up a little straighter. "Oh, what? Like, not necessarily us doing it," she added quickly. "I just mean in general. You know, Monogamy isn't the only way people stay connected. Some people have flexibility. It doesn't mean they love each other any less. I didn't say anything for a moment. My brain was still catching up, trying to understand if this was a test, a thought experiment, or something else entirely. You're asking if I'd be okay with us seeing other people? I said. No, she replied, too fast. Then, after a pause, I'm just saying I've been reading about it. Listening to a podcast, actually. There's this couple that's been together for 15 years, and they said opening their marriage made them stronger. More honest. Less stagnant. That word. Stagnant. It stuck in my chest like a dull knife. I kept my voice calm. Do you think we're stagnant? No, she said. But again, the timing didn't match the words. I just think we've been together a long time. And we talk so much about building a life that sometimes it feels like we forget to live. And living means sleeping with other people? She sighed, set her glass down, and walked over to the couch. Otis jumped down to make room as she sat beside me. I don't mean to upset you, she said, placing her hand on my knee. I just think we should be able to talk about things like this, without judgment. And that's the thing, she was calm. Almost too calm. Like this wasn't just a passing thought. Like maybe the conversation had already been happening in her head for a while. I told her I wasn't comfortable with it. That I didn't need variety to feel alive. That if something felt off between us, I'd rather work on us than bring other people into the picture. She nodded, said she appreciated my honesty, and that was it. She didn't push, didn't argue, just got up after a few minutes and went to take a shower. But the room felt colder after that, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something small, but deep, like a hairline crack in glass. You don't see the damage right away, but you know it's there. And eventually, it spreads. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling long after she'd fallen asleep beside me. I wish I could say that was the last time we talked about it, or that I didn't start second-guessing everything she did after that. But it was only the beginning. It started subtly. Nothing big. Nothing you'd immediately point to and say, that's it. But once the conversation about an open marriage happened, I couldn't help but start noticing things. Lauren said she was fine with my answer, that she just wanted to talk about the idea, no strings attached. But something about the way she moved afterward felt different. Not obvious, just quieter. She stopped reaching for my hand on the couch. She scrolled through her phone more, smiled at things she didn't share, and started wearing perfume to work again, something she hadn't done in months. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure, paranoid husband who thinks a single unanswered text means someone's cheating. I told myself people go through phases. That maybe the idea of an open marriage was just a reflection of her feeling bored or disconnected, and not something rooted in action. But over the next few weeks, there were signs I couldn't ignore. She changed her phone's passcode, said it was a new update from work, some privacy policy thing since she manages client accounts. Fair enough. But it bothered me. Not because I felt entitled to her phone, but because it used to be open. We didn't keep secrets. And now there was a new wall between us. She also started working later. Nothing crazy, just an extra hour here or there. Sometimes she'd come home already having eaten, which was unusual. Or she'd say she had dinner with coworkers, but never mention who. I started asking casual questions, nothing pushy. Just, who were you with? Or how was it? And every time, her answers felt too rehearsed. Too light. Oh, just the usual crew. It was fine. Boring. We mostly talked about work. You wouldn't know them. I didn't want to fight. I wanted to believe her. But something in my gut told me I shouldn't. One night, I came into the room and saw her quickly close out of an app on her phone. She smiled like nothing happened and said she was just scrolling TikTok. Maybe she was. But when she left to take a shower, I checked the app history. She wasn't on TikTok. She was using a private messaging app one didn't even recognize. That was the first time I felt it, really felt it. That wave of heat in your chest. Like your body knows something before your brain will let it settle. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything. I didn't even confront her. I just sat on the edge of the bed staring at the closed bathroom door while the water ran, and something inside me quietly shifted. After that, I started noticing other things. She started dressing differently when she went out. Not dramatically, but enough for me to raise an eyebrow. Tighter jeans, low-cut tops, lipstick. Not for work. Not for anything I ever saw her attend. And her energy when she came back? Almost too cheerful, like someone playing a part. Like she was overcompensating. And then there was her phone again. She started sleeping with it under her pillow. That's when I knew. I didn't have proof. Not then. But you don't need a smoking gun when the pattern changes completely. When the rhythm you built with someone falls out of sync, and they keep moving to a beat you can't hear anymore. I told myself I needed to be sure. I needed more than suspicion before I acted on anything. But inside, I was already starting to grieve something I hadn't even lost yet. Not officially, anyway. There's something strange that happens when you start doubting the person you've built your life with. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no single lightning bolt moment. It's more like erosion. Slow, steady, quiet. You keep brushing it off, convincing yourself that you're imagining it, that you're overthinking. And then you look back one day and realize half the shore has disappeared beneath you. That's how things started to feel with Lauren. After that night, she brought up the open marriage. I noticed how the silence between us became heavier. Not angry or cold, just filled with things unsaid. We'd sit in the same room, both occupied, she on her phone, me watching something forgettable, and yet it was like we weren't really there with each other. She still smiled, still asked me how work was, still played the part, but there was something hollow about it now. Her attention had become divided, and I didn't know who, or what, was getting the other half. I tried to keep us connected. I planned a weekend getaway, just the two of us, a cabin a few hours north, near the lake where we used to go when we first started dating. She said yes, of course, but something about her reaction didn't sit right with me. It felt like she said it out of politeness, not excitement. And sure enough, the trip never happened. Work deadlines, she said. Campaigns behind schedule. Maybe next month. I didn't push it. Instead, I kept trying to close the distance in other ways. I suggested we cook together more often, like we used to. I bought tickets to a comedy show I knew she'd love. I even started walking Otis with her in the evenings, just so we'd have a reason to talk. But our conversations had shifted. Everything stayed on the surface. She didn't confide in me the way she used to. She didn't ask about the things she once cared about. It was like she'd drawn a line, invisible but firm, and whatever was on the other side of it, I wasn't meant to cross. What got to me more than anything, though, was how she stopped touching me. Lauren was always affectionate, even in the small moments. Her hand brushing mine while passing me a coffee, a kiss on the shoulder while I worked, her feet finding mine under the blanket. Those things just stopped. Slowly at first, then all at once. I started noticing how often we went to bed at different times. How she always seemed too tired. How her side of the bed stayed too neat. I can't remember the last time we had sex before it stopped entirely. I tried initiating, once or twice. The rejection was always gentle, but firm. She blamed stress. Hormones. It's not you, I promise, she said. I'm just not in that headspace lately. And maybe that would have been believable if it hadn't been paired with the late nights and sudden bursts of privacy. I started second-guessing myself. I'd stare at her when she wasn't looking, studying her face for something I couldn't name. I'd try to remember if I'd changed, if I'd done something to push her away. Maybe I'd become too predictable, too safe. I even wondered, stupidly, if not agreeing to the open marriage had made her feel trapped. And then I'd hate myself for thinking that, because why should I feel guilty for not wanting to share my wife? There were moments when she'd still laugh at something I said, and for a split second, it felt like the old days. Like we were still us. But those moments were becoming fewer and farther between. And the contrast, the before and after, was starting to wear on me. At one point, I even considered asking her again. Directly. Sitting her down and just saying it. Is there something going on? But every time I tried to summon the words, they got caught in my throat. I think deep down, I already knew I wouldn't get a straight answer. Or worse, I would. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. So I stayed quiet. Watching. Waiting. Hoping that whatever this was, it was temporary. But hope, I've learned, can be a dangerous thing. It keeps you anchored just long enough for the storm to reach you. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work or lack of sleep. It's the kind that settles in when you spend your days pretending everything's okay, while every instinct in your body is screaming that it's not. That was me for the past few weeks. Functioning. Smiling when expected. Answering emails. Walking Otis. Going through the motions like some background character in my own life, while my mind looped through the same quiet, creeping question. What's really going on with Lauren? I hadn't found anything concrete. No lipstick on a collar, no unfamiliar names popping up on her phone, no hotel receipts or hushed phone calls at night. But everything in my gut was telling me something was happening behind the curtain. And the worst part? It wasn't even rage I felt. It was confusion, disorientation. Like someone had moved all the furniture in my house 2 inches to the left. Nothing looked wrong, but I kept bumping into things anyway. The changes kept stacking up. Lauren was still coming home late, but now with more energy than when she left. She breezed through the door with a casual, "Hey babe, how was your day?" and tossed her keys into the bowl without ever really looking at me. Her tone was always cheerful, too cheerful, like she was trying to deflect before I could ask anything that mattered. And when I did ask, she'd answer quickly, vaguely, and then steer the conversation back toward me. "Tell me about your day," she'd say, with a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She started taking calls outside, too. Said the reception was better on the back patio. I tested it one day, stood out there with my phone, just out of curiosity. Reception was fine inside. She didn't know I was watching when she laughed at something on the other end of the line. A hand tucked behind her ear, head tilted slightly like she used to do with me. And then she looked around. That quick glance people do when they're checking to see if they're being watched. I was behind the kitchen blinds. She never saw me. I didn't confront her. I didn't want to sound like the paranoid husband tracking his wife's every move. But I started documenting things quietly. Call times. Excuses. Gaps in her stories. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but I needed to know I wasn't losing my grip on reality. Then came the night she said she was having a girls' dinner with a few coworkers. I didn't ask who. I already knew she wouldn't offer names. But I asked her to send a picture. Just one. A selfie with the group. She blinked, clearly surprised, then gave me a tight laugh and said, "You don't trust me now?" I shrugged it off and said, "I just like seeing you smile." She never sent the picture. Later that night, I checked her location history on our shared map app. She'd turned it off. She hadn't done that in years, not since a weekend trip where she got lost and ended up in the wrong county. We'd laughed about it back then. But this time, there was no joke. Just silence. Nothing to track. Nothing to find. That's when it hit me, not as a suspicion anymore, but as a quiet certainty in my bones. Something had already changed. I just hadn't caught up to it yet. I started waking up earlier, waiting in the dark while she slept beside me. Her breathing slow and even, like the weight she carried never followed her into dreams. Mine did. Every night, I lay there with a gnawing pit in my stomach, wondering who she was smiling at when I wasn't around. I didn't say a word, but I was done pretending. I just needed the right moment, and I had a feeling it was coming sooner than she thought. It happened on a Tuesday. Not that the day mattered, but I remember because I had a dentist appointment that morning, and after they finished scraping my teeth and asking about my weekend while I couldn't respond, I decided to just head home instead of going back to work. I told myself it was because of the dull ache in my jaw, but really, I think I wanted to be alone. Or maybe part of me already knew. Lauren thought I was working until 6. I didn't text or call her. I just drove straight home, windows down, trying to ignore the tension crawling up the back of my neck. It was around 2:30 when I pulled into our driveway. Her car was there. At first, I thought maybe she was working from home that day, something last minute. But then I noticed the front door was unlocked. Not wide open, just slightly ajar. That's when my pulse started to pick up. I stepped inside quietly. No music. No TV. Just the faint hum of the fridge and the sound of footsteps upstairs, soft, rhythmic, unmistakable. I called out, "Lauren." Nothing. Just the sound of movement above me. I looked down and saw a pair of unfamiliar shoes by the door. Men's. Sizable. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop moving. I didn't think. I just climbed the stairs, one slow step at a time, until I reached the top. Our bedroom door was mostly shut, but not latched. And from inside, I heard her laugh. That breathy, giggly sound she used to make when we first started dating. I hadn't heard it in months. I pushed the door open, and there she was. My wife. The woman I'd built a life with, naked, tangled in the sheets with someone I recognized before my brain could even process what I was seeing. It was Derek. My best friend. He looked up first. His expression went from smug to stunned in a single second. Lauren froze beneath him, eyes wide, mouth open like she wanted to say something but no sound came out. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even move for a full 3 seconds. Then I spoke. "Get the hell out of my house." Derek scrambled, tripping over the side of the bed, trying to grab his clothes off the floor. Lauren clutched the blanket to her chest, stammering something about "this isn't what it looks like," which, honestly, would have been funny if I wasn't standing in the middle of it. I repeated myself, louder this time. "Get out." Derek didn't say a word. He just pulled his shirt over his head and rushed past me, shoes in hand. I heard the front door slam a moment later. Lauren stayed sitting on the edge of the bed, still covered, looking like she didn't know whether to cry or apologize or lie again. She opened her mouth. I raised a hand to stop her. "Don't," I said. "Not right now." I walked out of the room. My heart was pounding, but everything else felt numb, like my body had gone cold from the inside out. I went downstairs, opened the hall closet, and pulled out the spare toolbox. Grabbed the lock set. Lauren hadn't come down yet. Within the hour, I changed the front door lock. She wouldn't be coming back. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I lay in the spare bedroom, our guest room, though no guest had ever really stayed in it, staring at the ceiling with the lights off, just listening. The silence in the house was heavier than usual, like it knew what had happened and didn't quite know how to absorb it either. Lauren had packed a bag and left after I changed the locks. No screaming, no crying, just silence and the slow shuffle of her feet across the hardwood floor. When she walked out, she didn't even look back. She didn't have to. I wasn't begging her to stay. The next morning, I got up early, still in the clothes from the day before, and started moving through a checklist I didn't even know I had in my head. First, I called the locksmith and had them rekey the back door and garage as well. Then I canceled the shared credit card we had, left her name on the smaller one we never used, and let the bank know it was no longer a joint account. I felt robotic, focused, efficient, like I'd flipped a switch and was operating on some deeper survival instinct. Around noon, she texted me. Just 2 lines. "You didn't need to kick us out. I was going to talk to you. I don't need you anymore. I'm with Derek now." I stared at the message for a full minute. No anger, no apology, no regret. Just those words, like she was handing me a receipt for the end of our life together. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a response. Instead, I drove to her office. Not to confront her. Not to cause a scene. Just to confirm one small detail, the car. The black sedan I had bought her 2 years ago when her old one gave out. Paid in full. My name on the title. Hers was never added. I walked around it once, took a few photos to timestamp the location, and left without being seen. Then I headed straight to the bank. The guy at the loan desk was helpful. Friendly, even. I told him I wanted to take out a lien on the vehicle collateral against a small loan. He asked if I needed the money. I told him I needed the paperwork. He didn't ask questions after that. I made sure everything was legal and above board. Within 2 days, the car had a lien against it and she had no idea. Not until her shiny new life with my so-called best friend suddenly came with a repo notice. I don't know when she found out, but I assume it was soon after. She stopped texting. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. It was about making sure they couldn't just waltz off into their little fantasy life with everything I built. That car wasn't just a gift. It was a part of me. A part one was taking back. I also canceled her gym membership, the joint streaming accounts, the travel points I'd saved for the trip we were supposed to take next year. Piece by piece, I took myself out of her world. And in the space where she used to be, I started to rebuild. I cleaned the house top to bottom, stripped the bed, donated half of the furniture she'd picked out. Anything with her fingerprints on it started to feel like rot. Even the smell of her lotion on the bathroom towels made me sick. I boxed everything up and took it to a storage unit on the edge of town. Her name's on the lease now. I mailed her the key. It sounds vindictive, maybe even petty, but I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I had to reclaim something. Not revenge. Not justice. Just my space. My breath. My peace. I don't know where she's staying now. Probably with him. Probably playing house like they didn't destroy one to get there. And maybe they're happy. Maybe they're in that sick honeymoon phase where everything feels like a fresh start. But I know the truth. If she lied to me this easily, she'll lie to him too. And when the glow fades and real life creeps back in, he'll see what I saw too late. But by then, I'll be long gone. Part of me thought the house would feel haunted after she left. Not in the ghostly sense, but in that emotional residue way, like her presence would still be stitched into the walls, into the sheets, into the little grooves on the kitchen table where we used to eat dinner. But once I cleared it all out, the candles she liked, the photos from vacations, even the throw pillows she insisted brought the room together. It felt clean. Quiet. Like the first inhale after holding your breath too long. For the first time in years, I had the house to myself, and I wasn't using that time to wait on anyone. No texting to check in. No planning around her schedule. No pretending not to notice the distance that had crept in like fog under a door. I started doing things for me. Small things at first, waking up early to run again, cooking real meals instead of microwaving leftovers, playing music in the kitchen while I worked. Otis adjusted faster than I expected. He'd still glance toward the door at night like he was waiting for her to come home. But after a while, he stopped. Just like I did. I began to reach out to old friends. The ones who'd quietly backed off when Lauren started filtering who we spent time with. I never noticed it happening, not really. But once I was on the other side of it, I could see how she had slowly curated our social circle until it was mostly her coworkers, her people, her world. So I started reclaiming my own. I joined a weekend cycling group. Nothing too serious, just a bunch of regular people who liked early mornings, coffee after a long ride, and talking about something other than spreadsheets and office gossip. That's where I met Jenna. She wasn't loud or flashy. She wasn't trying to be anything. That was the first thing I noticed. Just a woman with a steady laugh and the kind of calm that made people lean in when she talked. We didn't start off flirting. Honestly, I didn't think I was ready for that. But after a few rides, a few shared routes, a few conversations about things that had nothing to do with pain or betrayal or broken marriages, we had coffee. Then lunch. Then, without even realizing it, I looked forward to seeing her more than I looked forward to being alone. She asked about my past, eventually. I told her the truth, in a measured way, not out of bitterness, just honesty. I told her about Lauren, about Derek, about how everything ended. She didn't flinch. She didn't push. She just listened. Jenna had been through her own kind of hurt. Different, but familiar enough. It made the silence between us comfortable instead of awkward. Two people who weren't pretending to be anything other than what they were. Healing. A few weeks later, she came over for dinner. I cooked. Otis approved. We sat outside in the backyard, under the string lights I finally got around to hanging. The ones Lauren had bought, but never used. It wasn't a date, not officially. But there was something about the way she stayed until after midnight, and the way we didn't rush to say goodbye. That told me maybe it was becoming one. No fireworks. No cinematic kiss in the rain. Just something real, quiet, and unforced. Something beginning. And I realized, in that moment, that maybe this wasn't just about surviving what happened to me. Maybe it was about starting again. Not because I needed to fill the space Lauren left behind, but because I had finally made space for something, someone else. It's strange how life keeps moving, even after it breaks. For weeks after everything fell apart, I'd catch myself looking for signs that it was still the same. Lauren's shoes by the door, her laughter in the next room, the way her perfume lingered in the hallway. But one by one, those traces faded. And in their place, something else began to take root. Something quieter. Something stronger. Peace. I didn't realize how heavy things had been until they weren't anymore. How much I'd been bending, compromising, swallowing doubts, trying to hold together something that was already cracked through the center. When you're in it, you tell yourself you're just going through a rough patch. That things will circle back. That love, if it was real, will always find its way. But love doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes. And when someone chooses to walk away from it, piece by piece, you don't always see the end coming until you're standing in it, knee-deep, surrounded by the wreckage. I don't hear from Lauren anymore. Not since she realized I wasn't going to fight for her or with her. She sent a few texts after the car was taken, after the locks were changed, after she realized Derek couldn't offer her the comfort she'd burned down our home to chase. One message said I was cruel. Another said I was punishing her. But what she never said, not once, was, "I'm sorry." Not in a way that mattered. Derek's out of the picture now, from what I've gathered through mutual acquaintances. Apparently, things fell apart not long after she moved in with him. I can't say I'm surprised. What starts in betrayal rarely ends in trust. They weren't partners, they were co-conspirators. And when the thrill wore off, all that was left were two people who had to look each other in the eye and live with what they'd done. As for me, I'm not bitter. That might be the hardest thing to explain when people hear the story. They expect fire, hatred, revenge fantasies played on a loop. But I let all of that go. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I wake up early now, make my bed, brew real coffee instead of pod garbage. Otis sleeps at my feet while I read in the mornings, something I never used to make time for. Jenna and I are still seeing each other. It's slow, gentle, real. There's no pressure to define anything yet. Just the comfort of being with someone who sees me, not who I used to be, not who they want me to become, but just me. I've reconnected with people I lost along the way, Friends who quietly said, "We were waiting for you to come back." I didn't realize how much of myself I gave up to keep the illusion alive until I stepped out of it. I've started therapy too. Not because I'm broken, but because I want to understand why I didn't see the cracks sooner. Why I stayed as long as I did. Why I ignored my own voice until it was screaming. People say betrayal changes you. They're right. It strips you bare. But what they don't say is that once everything false has been burned away, what's left is something solid. Something true. I don't regret loving her. I regret trusting someone who didn't respect that love. But I don't carry that as a wound anymore. I carry it as a lesson. This is the part where most people say, if you've read this far, thanks for listening. And yeah, thank you. Writing all this out wasn't easy, but it helped. It reminded me that I'm not alone in this, that betrayal doesn't make you weak, and healing doesn't make you soft. So this is where I leave the story. Not with a dramatic finale, not with fireworks, but with a clean slate, and a heart that, despite everything, still believes in better things ahead.